let's talk about the Cup Series debut on the Indianapolis road course. I thought the racing was actually pretty good until the track started coming apart, or more specifically, the curbing. Now, this isn't the first time that NASCAR has had issues with tracks. 2004 at Martinsville when Jeff Gordon hit a chunk of loose concrete. 2010 in the Daytona 500 when the track came apart. And even this year at Atlanta, the track also came apart. Chase Briscoe took an early lead from William Byron. Briscoe looked really solid while in the lead, and he did win the inaugural Xfinity Series race on the road course in 2020. Tyler Reddick used strategy to win stages 1 and 2. Brad Keselowski stayed out after stage 1 for track position. He was really struggling with the handling of his car. He was doing a pretty reasonable job holding the field off for a while, but he eventually started falling through the field before spinning himself out and backing into the wall. Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson were the two most dominant cars for most of the race, especially towards the middle to end. Lap 41, there was a debris caution. An entire splitter and radiator pan got stuck underneath the curbing at turn 6. On lap 74, there was another caution for debris. It slid off track, but because NASCAR doesn't really impose track limits, it was still in the racing line on the exit of turn 6. It was wider than most cars were running, but you could actually see tire marks where it was sitting, so it was a good call for a caution in my opinion. On lap 78, Truex spun after coming out of turn 6 with a lot of debris coming out from someone's car. NASCAR kept the race green for some reason. On lap 79, as cars made their way through 5 and then 6, there was even more debris and a 9-car wreck. The apex curb in turn 6 was ripped apart. The race was red flagged as track workers went to work on the turn. Even IMS track president Doug Bowles got in on the work. They pulled up the entire piece of curbing and removed it. James Davison lost an engine after the red flag was removed and laid down a ton of fluid. So then there was a lengthy cleanup under caution. At turn 6, they did leave the raised sausage curb perpendicular to the track. It was pretty much a guarantee someone was going to hit it, and they did. When they went back racing, there was a 7-car wreck as Michael McDowell was the first to find the curb and got launched. On the restart, AJ Allmendinger, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Briscoe went 3 wide into turn 1. Briscoe got shoved wide and then went straight across the grass to turn 3, bypassing turn 2. He came back on track right with the leaders. Briscoe was given a penalty for cutting the track. Later in the lap, Briscoe turned Denny Hamlin. Briscoe said it was an accident, but Hamlin was not happy, and rightfully so. Briscoe overshot turn 12 and Allmendinger got the lead and would go on to score Colleague Racing's first Cup Series win. I go back to lap 41 when they pulled up the curbing to pull out the splitter and radiator pan. They had to pry the curbing up, and so I wonder if that maybe did more damage to the curbing than was already there and made it worse throughout the race to the point of being ripped apart. Even if this wasn't the cause of the problem, the fact that a whole splitter and radiator pan was able to get stuck under it is pretty alarming and still a problem. Now, I've seen some people blame NASCAR for this, and I have criticized NASCAR plenty of times, but this is in no way NASCAR's fault. NASCAR does not own Indy. Roger Penske owns Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The track is responsible for preparing the facility for the race. It's NASCAR's job to ensure that the track is race ready and in safe condition. Now, I'm not really blaming IMS either, because I think this was just a freak thing that couldn't have been planned for. I'm not blaming NASCAR because, again, I think it was just a freak thing. The curbing probably looked fine prior to the race, and throughout the race until it got torn apart. That curb was there the whole weekend and didn't have any issues. After removing the apex curb, I think the reason they left the large sausage curb was because they wanted to give drivers a reference for where the corner and track limits were. And having that curb there, it still helps police track limits without NASCAR having to step in and create judgment calls, which wouldn't have been good, considering there wasn't even an apex curb for drivers to reference from now. I guess you could say it's NASCAR's fault for not throwing the caution after Truex spin with all the debris, but the curbing issues aren't. The curb issues are all on IMS. So the question is, how did this happen? Also, how do they keep it from happening again? Why was the curb fine for IndyCar and Xfinity, but not Cup? Obviously for IndyCar, they don't have splitters to get caught under the curb, but Xfinity cars do. One difference between the Cup cars and the Xfinity cars is that Xfinity cars have a ride height limit, while Cup cars don't. The other road courses NASCAR races at haven't had these issues. So why did it happen at Indy? It is kind of weird to me that this happened at Indy, as Indy holds an FIA Grade 1 license, making it the highest in facilities and safety standards for the FIA. As compared to other tracks that NASCAR races at that have FIA licenses, which are Grade 2. Now, I'm not saying FIA Grade 1 tracks are immune from having issues. In 2017 at Sepang, a broken drain cover destroyed Roman Grosjean's Haas. I'm just saying that I'd expect the lower level tracks to have the issues over the higher level tracks, especially when we're talking about a curb that's been there for a while and been fine. So it just makes me wonder though, how old was that curb that was installed there? Was it old and maybe being close to being needed to be replaced, or did it just unexpectedly fail? Is the curb they use different from what other tracks use, or do they secure it to the pavement differently? All the other corners seem fine, so it's just a really weird situation. It almost seems though that racing outside of IndyCar at Indianapolis is cursed. There was the 2005 F1 tire debacle, the 2008 NASCAR tire debacle, and now this for NASCAR. It will be interesting to see what was the cause for the curbing issues and what Indy does to fix it, and then what NASCAR does with Indy for next year. I think NASCAR needs to be at Indy, but if the racing is going to be poor on the oval, then the road course seems like a better option. But if the road course isn't going to be a safe facility for NASCAR, then that is definitely not an option either. There is another option, though, for NASCAR to continue to run the road course and avoid the turn 5-6 chicane. They could go back to the old Formula 1 loop of turns 5, 6, and 7. That section of track still exists, but is not used by any series right now. The only real change from the original F1 layout is turns 8 and 9 with the removal of the double hairpin after the Holman straight. All the other changes just added track. There was also criticism of NBC because they moved the race from NBC to NBC Sports Network. And now, to be clear, this is something I have criticized in the past, but I'm actually going to defend it this time. At Talladega last year, I criticized them for moving the race to NBCSN after the race ran a little long so they could air local news. This time it's different. This time the race didn't run a little long, it ran a lot long. This race from green flag to checkered flag was in the 4.75 hour range. For comparison, the Xfinity race was just over 2 hours. but was only 50 miles shorter of the scheduled distance of the Cup race. The average speed was less than 5 miles per hour difference, with Xfinity clocking in at 73.825 and Cup at 69.171. The actual race time was just under 3.5 hours. The race was red flagged though for over an hour for track repairs and wrecks. The race was also extended from 82 laps to 95 laps, or 31.7 miles. NBC had stuck with the race for a while, but eventually had to move it to fulfill their other sports commitments. I don't blame NBC for this, I blame the race lasting so long. It's unfortunate for those that don't have NBCSN, but it happens. It's not NBC's fault. This is one of those things though that F1 has an advantage with, as they have a strict 2-hour time limit for races. This allows broadcast partners to block out a 2.5-hour time slot and guarantee they get the full race in. So I think that Indy and NASCAR has to understand what the cause of the curbing issues were before I think NASCAR can make a decision on whether to come back to the road course or go back to the oval. Some people want NASCAR to move to Lucas Oil Raceway, but NASCAR isn't going to leave Indianapolis. It's just not going to happen. I would like to see NASCAR back on the road course if they can fix the curbing issues and ensure they won't happen again. Because like I said, the racing I thought was pretty good. The oval hasn't always produced great racing. With the new car coming in next year, that makes me wonder how the racing could be on the oval though. Could it be better than it has been? The new car is designed to race better on road courses, so I would expect that to translate to better racing on the road course. And with NASCAR moving to a more short track and road course focused schedule, I do think NASCAR sticks to the road course at Indy moving forward. So now, you've heard from me, and now I want to hear from you. What did you think of the racing at the inaugural Cup Series race on the Indy road course? Would you prefer that NASCAR races the oval or road course going forward? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and until next time, so long everybody.